Hello everybody, welcome to the Man Alone YouTube channel. I'm Man Alone, and I'm very excited today to share with you my newest product available on DriveThruRPG, link below, Vox Gravis. This is a solo RPG oracle that you already know about, is what I wrote, and the reason I said you already know about it is because this is an oracle based on archetypes, as described by our friend Carl Gustav Jung. And it would be best practice right now from a capitalist standpoint for me to apply this delightful 25-page oracle available for $2.99. That's only 10 cents more than a large fry at McDonald's, by the way. You can get if you get 2 small fries, if you're one of those people that eats McDonald's several times a week. Do those people exist anymore? Like when I was growing up, there were families that got McDonald's like 5 times a week. Maybe they're all gone. Anyway, so it's available in PDF. It prints pretty nice if you're not a moron, which I am. I've never been good at doing this. It took me 75 tries to get this in a booklet form. And I don't know how to... Do you need like a really long stapler to staple the middle? Anyways, this is a PDF that I put together based on this idea of using these archetypes as solo play inputs because they are about as universal as it gets. They are, so to speak, the firmware installed in your system. So while it would be most advantageous, I can get the most muns from playing a game of Forbidden Lands with this. I'm sure that I will in the future, but every time I kept conceptualizing this video, I kept saying, well, I should do a little bit about archetypes. And the more I was thinking about that introduction, the more I realized just like how much I want to talk about this. And the reason I want to talk about this, it's not that people have it like totally wrong. I don't want to do that kind of YouTube video, like everything. When people talk about archetypes, they're totally wrong. They're not. They kind of got it, but there's more to it. There's more to it, which requires a little bit of, it's not a leap of faith, but it's like, you ever heard that Zen koan when the guy comes to learn from the teacher and the teacher takes some tea? I love Zen koans, by the way, because they always involve some ancient master just straight up dunking on some stupid student for no reason, like unprovoked. But he's like filling up the tea and he like keeps filling it. And the student's like, bro, I'm done. Like, it's full. Like, there's no more room. And the teacher's like, that's like you. Like, I can't put anything in here because it's already filled with your BS, right? And so I think like in order to really hear what needs to be said about archetypes and to hear the deeper meaning of them and to get a better understanding of what they really mean, you have to, like, if you don't know about this, you have to empty your cup a little bit. That, I mean, there's no easy way to say this without, because once you tell someone like, hey, just trust me or whatever, that's automatically going to put them on the defensive. So I'm not saying that, but like, I think that if you're in a place of incredulity when learning about Jung, a sort of skeptical position that's very pragmatic and utilitarian, you're never going to get past just like the definitions, okay? And that might be the case. Like, I'm not saying Jung is right. I'm just saying that if you're not in a place in which you are receptive to the possibility of there being something new revealed, then it's just not going to saturate because it feels quite woo-woo. You know what I'm saying? It feels a bit navel gazing. And that's what I love about Jung. I mean, Jung was part of what allowed me to develop my own spirituality and a connection with the unseen. And I think it is really important to attempt to abandon, your scientific method, even if just as an experiment, right? So let's start though with the definition. So archetypes are, to Jung, archetypes were like the instinct of the mind. So the instinct is this quality of a new organism that allows them to engage in physical behaviors that sustain them, right? Like there are, and it's wild, man. There are instincts that a baby has that just are there, right? Nobody installed, I mean, I guess mom installed those, but like, I mean, the most obvious one, and I don't love saying this word because it's demonic, but like the suckle reflex, right? That is required for extracting milk. And even if you use formula, you still have to sort of mimic that delivery system so they can latch and extract. But there's also like the Babinski reflex. If you rub the bottom of their foot, they'll have like their toes will curl back. There's a startle reflex. If you like extend their little teensy arms in front and then you release them just a little bit, you don't like lift them off the table, but you lift up their arms and then you let it go. They'll sort of startle like that, right? And these are all part of like their OS, right? And so what Jung would say is that archetypes are that, but for your thoughts, for your notion. They are these symbols, these essential ideas about the world that come pre-installed. You don't learn them, okay? And the simplest way to think about this is why you like your mother when you're little, right? Now you can winnow that into a simple biological explanation, right? You say the mother is a source of sustenance, the mother is a source of warmth, the mother's face is the first face that you map, etc. But like the idea of a mother is extremely specific. I mean, if you go back to the primordial ooze, bacteria wasn't like, mama, right? There's this idea, this connection of a mother, a mothering figure. And it comes, we can see it in birds, maybe. We can see it in birds. We can see it in mammals. But like it really reaches its zenith in humans. And we can see this as other animals get older. A lot of them don't have that connection. They don't visit mom on the weekends or anything, right? And so we have this idea of a mother, and I know that seems obvious. I understand that. It's like, of course we do, right? But why is it that we like mothers and we don't necessarily feel the same way about door frames, right? And I get the survival piece. I get the sustenance piece, but like the baby doesn't think that. When you're just born, you're not like, mother. Yes, I will go to this person for sustenance. You have no idea what you're doing. For the first 2 years, you're just flopping around. People are just flopping you around, throwing you in baskets, lifting you up, smelling your head. What is up with that, ladies? And you have no idea about anything, right? And for some reason, though, like mama, like a mother, is something that the baby even recognizes by analogy. Like in a picture book, a baby will get excited about a mother. That's a thing. That's there already, right? And so Jung would say that archetypes are these innate universal symbols or notions or patterns, and they guide how we engage with life, how we experience it, how we interpret it, okay? The mother is just one of those. And these archetypes, now Jung did not name all of these in Vox Gravis. I did summon a lot of them, but I mean, they are, I think, talked about. Jung describes archetypes enough that I had, pretty good ideas of these atavistic forms, these notions that we have. And I use these to create an oracle. I created an oracle such that when you have a deck of cards, you pull a card, and each suit has like sort of a theme, right? And so hearts are emotions, relationships, inner life. Clubs are actions, growth, personal challenges. Diamonds are wisdom, guidance, and spiritual insight. And spades are shadows, fears, and transformations. I did that randomly, but I want you to think about for a second how right I am. You know what I'm saying? Here, let me actually bring this up here. So, like, I'm right. Right? That is like, don't those feel that flavor? Like, obviously hearts, right? Clubs, boom, club, someone over the head. A diamond, it seems kind of smart. These are these ineffable ideas that we have, the shape of things, the resonance they have in our unconscious mind, and they just feel right, you know? And they even look right. Like a heart looks much kinder than a spade or a diamond, even though a spade is like it's just like an upside down heart with a apple stalk. What is it? What's the apple thing called? A twig? A stem poking out of it, right? And so this is the kind of stuff that archetypes are made of. They're these things that before we get launched out of the great assembly line in the sky, wait, that's death, from the sky, you get a couple like downloads, and mother is one of them. Another one is hero. Children love a hero. They love heroism in their books. A lot of children's cartoons and comics and stories involve a child overcoming adversity. And in the same way that these instincts, these physical instincts that a child has, helps them to survive and thrive, so too do these archetypes. Like, a hero is an important archetype to have because it prompts the child towards an aspiration for personal growth, for meeting challenges head on, from overcoming your fears, right? And it also shows a sort of meaningfulness around doing things, sacrificing for others. And this is where I think there's a dividing line here. There's a dividing line here between some of you that can go with this and some of you that are not interested. And I'm not judging about that. I think it has a lot to do with a lot of things. But I think the fact that Jung believed in a collective unconscious, a stream of preconscious, subconscious thought, a river of thought from which all humans draw from and contribute to. I have had many experiences, but 3 in particular in my life that I will talk about on this channel one day, that show me that is true. Like, and I talk about this with BB sometimes. I'm like, it's really weird because for me, there's just no way it's not true. It's just true. Like, I just know it. And one of the weird things about just knowing those things is, like, first of all, you can't transfer it to other people, right? Because it's like it's like convincing someone that like a cake tastes good because you describe how it smells. Words fail, right? And really, you can't believe that cake is good until you bite into it. But that's one problem, is like this incapability of words. But the other problem is, I just am okay with it if you don't agree. Like that's part of kind of seeing that river is you're like, oh yeah, like everybody is or is not going to approach this in a different way at the time that they're ready. Maybe some people, they don't have to, or maybe they're going to go about it in a totally different way, or maybe they're going to find some other completely other way to find meaning and fulfillment. And I'm totally cool with that. And that's really a gift in terms of judgmentalism, because uh, judging other people is something that leads you to judging yourself, and it is one of the most exhausting things you can do. It is a huge use of mental energy and spiritual energy, and you're not able to be fully creative until you can let go of that. And so I'm not trying to convince you of anything, but I tend to agree that we do have this collective unconscious, this shared undercurrent. And Jung would say that one of the ways that these reveal themselves to us is through these archetypes, these images, imagos that in, come up in our mind, and we try as humans to communicate these. We're not able to name them always, but we create myths around them, right? And there is differences in terms of how these myths are culturally dressed and delivered, but for the most part, if we're looking at the highest level myths in different cultures, they're very similar, right? So like if we go at the highest level here, almost every culture has a myth about a person who has to find something very valuable and almost losing themselves to the material desires of the world. But then when they actually find that thing, they are wealthy, but like in spirit or understanding, right? Um, Almost every culture has like a boogeyman, you know. Um, Almost every culture has a very special relationship with water and containers that hold water. They have stories about the night sky, right? And so these are myths are one of the ways that we share or try to talk about our archetypes. Okay. Now it's a little bit difficult because Jung never provides like a D66 list of archetypes, which is why in part that I had to a lot of these I drew from just offhand exemplars that Jung or Joseph Campbell talks about this a lot in the hero um, arc, but the hero's journey. I drew these from Jung's collected works, which I would link below, but I don't. Just Google it because it is 11,000, I think, 368 pages. And so if you open it, usually it will crash your browser. Like the first time I opened it, it crashed my browser for so long. I had to like reinstall it. But it is available. You can also buy it for $562. But it is available digital online. And in book 9, Jung talks about archetypes, and I drew some of the examples from that, and just all over. I've read, being honest and optimistic, I probably read a fourth of Jung's collective works. It's gorgeous, it's beautiful, it's intriguing, it's confusing. And there's also that thing where sometimes you don't fully understand what he's saying, but you sort of get the vibe. And I like that because that is partly what archetypes are. It's like this vibe, this feeling you have. But words fail. I talked about a cake before. It's like if I wanted to describe to you what a hot chocolate tasted like, and you've never had hot chocolate, you never even had chocolate, I could use some words. I could say it's like sweet. It's got like a little bit of a floral edge to it. It's rich. It's a little bit tingly, maybe. It's very satisfying. That's pretty okay description of it, but like there's no way, even if I were to carry on and give you 500 more words of what hot chocolate tastes like, you don't taste it. You don't taste it. The only true way of knowing is experiencing it, right? I mean, it's that one of the paradoxes of knowledge, my brain is getting scrambled right now who this was, but it's this idea of like, on one hand, you have a person who goes into a library for 25 years and reads every single piece of literature about the sun, the anthropological understandings of it, the mythology behind it, the science of it, hydrogen, sun flares, everything. And they read maybe 100,000 pages of information about the sun. And then there's another person who doesn't do any of that, but they look at the sun. That person knows the sun better, right? And so it's like that the learning of experience is very difficult to transmit, and this is why we developed these mythologies, and this is why I wanted to make this oracle. It was like a little bit of a secret side project. Is because I think that this is the greater lesson that I want to show about solo role playing. A couple of things. First of all, I believe, as Jung believed, that our investments, what we put into the collective unconscious, that river, is likely the most valuable thing that we do in this life. I really believe that. And I believe that solo play is a heavy deposit into that river. The other thing is, I think one of the coolest things I learned about myself from solo play is all of these tools, none of them really tell me anything. They just cue these things that I already know. They are sort of like an auto Dewey Decimal System on my thoughts. And so what I tried to do was use these archetypes as leads whenever you encounter a difficult or confusing or ambiguous moment in play, anytime that you use an oracle. I give an example here of the Six of Clubs, which is the mentor, and I thought it was clever because it's like I'm kind of teaching you how to use it, right? And so I give an example up top. You hug the wall as you turn the corner, your eyes strain to adjust the inky black beyond the glow of your torch. At first you feel relieved, no vermin this time, only a plain wall stands in front of you. But then it hits you, this wall is a shelf. As far as the eye can see, this shelf is covered in, what? Draw a card. So you draw a Six of Clubs. That's a fine card. Let's see what it is. The mentor, teaching. That doesn't really seem to fit. So let's go then to the reference list. Okay. And so by the way, like for every card, there's a list here, but then in the back, there's this reference list where you can look up each of the cards individually. It also has jokers, the angel and the devil, which put like a little bit of a turn on it, a twist. But let's look at this one. So the mentor is teaching, guidance, wisdom, leadership. The mentor archetype inspires others through knowledge and experiencing, empowering them to grow and succeed. The challenge of it is it's a risk of becoming overly didactic or controlling. And a manifestation could be a lantern, a book, or an outstretched hand. So a lot of times, I think for NPC encounters, you'd probably use the first three. And then if you're looking for something, an object or something in the environment, you'd use symbolic manifestation. It doesn't always go that way, but I think it tends to go that way. And so we could just use that symbolic manifestation and say, oh, okay, from the shelf, there's a big old hand and it's going to snatch you, right? Because this seems to be what this was leading to in the examples. It seems to be leading to some sort of encounter or difficulty. But then, my challenge is to try and use as much of it as you can. And I underline some of the things in this example. So we say, okay, this shelf is covered in books, and a shrouded figure stands under a single lantern. They say, I love to read. I love to read, the voice says, seeming to emerge from the hollow where a face should be. But some books are just so dull. I just can't get through them. Like this one, for example. Their shrouded body walks towards you, each step a crackling of ancient vertebrae. The chalk white bones of their outstretched hand holds a book, the title of which is Your Name? This one, he says. I think I'd rather just skip right to the end of it. Okay, roll for initiative. So the idea here is this like teacher, but the challenge is this risk of being overly controlling, which to me was not only like trying to control your progress, but also the idea of like, I don't like it when a book isn't giving me what I want, and so I just like skip ahead to the part of the meaning. This, I think, more than anything for me, would be a tool that I would want early in solo play, because it teaches me to be nimble, to be agile, and to be sort of a little bit, I don't want to say disconnected from outcome, but like, it is best to see inputs from oracles as like just a little bit of a bounce, like a spring. And rather than agonizing about placing what it says into it, you just need to look at it as an external thing that collides with your thoughts and sends those thoughts in a new direction. And so if you think of something from an input that's totally oblique, that's fine, because all you need from the oracle is a feeling of encountering the unexpected, of being surprised at something you were not expecting, which is the joy of role-playing. And we're trying to replicate that joyful part where the GM or DM or whatever gives you something that you did not see coming. And so you're using this oracle, and you're giving yourself something you did not see coming because it was buried in that stream. And whether you see that as your personal unconscious, whether you don't give a crap about the unconscious mind at all, this thing then rears up, but it was always there. It was always there, right? And so I think that this is probably what you need to know about archetypes, enough you need to know to use this resource. I hope you'll consider buying it for just 10 cents more than a large fry. If you want to get a large fry, though, I understand you cannot eat this. Do you know that in a large fry, on average, there's 100 fries? So this one is like 108 fries. Anyways, so that right there, I think, is enough. I wanted to talk a little bit more about Jung's impressions of archetypes and their meaning in society, and how they manifest themselves through myth and religion. But that would be sort of like bonus time on the clock. So if you're a rootin' tootin' ready to rock kind of guy and you just want to get going, this could be like that cutoff point right here. If you're curious and want to go a little bit deeper about archetypes, stick around. All right, so where we would probably still in the everyday see archetypes, and this is, when I say see archetypes, I mean those projected out into the world. In the West, it's dwindling because the pursuit of reason and science is to quarantine the unknown into the fenced-in areas of the node, right? The knowable. And this is sort of the heart of what might be called the Enlightenment project, right? Is this idea that the world is the matrix, and everything is knowable, it is empiric, and the only reason we don't know something is because we have not yet reached the level of scientific discovery needed in order to break it down into its component parts, know it, and eventually replicate it. And so I would say one area in which archetype projection comes out is in the sort of esoteric. And the way that we see the esoteric in society is very interesting, especially in our modern culture. We see things like horoscopes and tarot as something like a dalliance that is fun, and it's even more fun if you pretend that it's real. Or some people see it as a heuristic, like a psychological heuristic, that it shows us things that are a type of shorthand for knowing, and that, for instance, a tarot card can be drawn, and the results of that card will reveal something to us, and it will reveal something that is in us. And I do actually believe that. I'm not disagreeing with that, but I would say that's about as deep that most people go, right? There are some people that go further than that, right? That say that using tarot is incantation, it is divination, it's calling on, spirits or another realm. And I also have no problem saying that, because I don't feel as though talking about spells or other realms is that weird, in that, like, I think a lot of things are spells. I think when people manipulate people, I think that's like a spell. When people intimidate them, I think that's like casting a spell on them, to me, that's just anything that is getting people to alter the trajectory of their actions based on just like combinations of words that you say. But something unfortunate, I think, is that as part and parcel to this Enlightenment project, we have taken it upon ourselves as reasoned, scientific, rational humans to break down any sort of symbols, right? It's almost like it's literally iconoclasm, right? It's just anything that is symbolic, that holds power because it is a referent to something else, be that a cross, a monument, an actual symbol, a statue, anything that portends to be more than it appears to be. It has become not only acceptable, but like a positive moral action to disassemble that. It is a crowd of people saying, I know how you did that magic trick, and I'm not going to be, bayed by these little, like, vague symbols that you have. They don't mean anything. They're just symbols. That's not a cross or a crucifix. It's just two lines at right angles, right? However, part of the tragedy of this is that symbols, or to a larger extent, mythology, those were ways in which we were able to take these extremely potent unconscious energies, which we cannot fully explain, which we cannot replicate, which artists strive to replicate. They go crazy trying to replicate them. Writers will write 11,000 page books trying to replicate them. People can lose their minds. They can have psychotic breaks trying to access them. I mean, Brian Wilson, I don't know if you know this from the Beach Boys, but he had his mental breakdown because he was trying to write the music for Fire. Like, he kept looking at a fireplace and trying to write that. It was like it was a song. Okay. And so when we destroy those things, what we do is we have eliminated these ways to keep those ideas contained and safe and usable, right? Like, I'm even looking at this right now on my tarot deck here. Like, this would be, not sure if it's a mandala, but it is a, very potent symbols. I'm sure that in here you can find, there's like Star of David, there's gemstones, there's the moon, there's the overlapping squares, and these are ways that through much time and effort and generational work, people have taken these chaotic energies and formed them into something safe. Now, the most sort of classic way of doing this, in the East, is the mandala, right? Which is this circular. Now, this is the wheel of life, but if you've ever seen this, it's like they'll shake out little tiny bits of different colored sand into these concentric, repeating, gorgeous patterns. And then when they're done, often they just blow it away. Everything is very impermanent. And the mandala, I never knew how to say that exactly, but this is a way to contain it. I mean, look how chaotic this is, right? I mean, this is everything. This is life. This is karma. This is sending things along on generations. And if you look at, in many different traditions, so this would be the mandala of Kunrig, and then you look at, this is Eskimo's shaman's mask. Okay, this is Sipapuna. This is a Hopi painting, a contemporary painting, and it has that, it has a sort of like modernist modularity to it, but it still is a circular figure, right? It is something that contains primordial chaos, right? Because these symbols are way too powerful. In Collected Works, book 9, Jung talks about a saint, and I forget his name, but it's like I think Nicholas of Flue. He calls him Brother Klaus, but basically he was canonized right around the time that Jung was writing this, and it's because he saw this, like, what would it be, like a fiery burning vision of this like mystical diagram that he realized was the Holy Trinity, and he wanted to share this, but he couldn't, and he was making what turned into many mandalas sorry, let's just say mandalas, that could not quite get it, and really almost lost himself. It's also very interesting that this guy is canonized, but he also later conveniently ignored that he has visions of like God as his mother and stuff like that. But the idea here is that in the few times that these symbols are directly exposed to humans, it is special humans. I mean, this is when people schizophrenia, no doubt, was seen as a mark of shamanism, because you were having direct interface with these extremely powerful symbols, and using these symbols to capture that, and then using myth to describe it in a way that conveyed all of the necessary parts of it, but did not require this direct encounter to it. So we've destroyed all that, right? We've triumphed. We've said, no more. This is nothing. It's a pretty picture, right? This is a tree. There's no tree of life. There's no reason to do that. I mean, look at art. Art now is, in my opinion, it's disgusting. Like, there is nothing that draws upon the unconscious in like popular high capital art. There's definitely people who are doing amazing art, but I just talking about the things being traded right now. I mean, Damien Hirst is like, I mean, I don't even know what to say. It's like repulsive, because there's nothing dipped into that river of the collective unconscious. It's just completely on the nose messaging or pretty pictures. There's art that just tells you exactly what it's about. And the reason for that is because we are experiencing the consequences of living in a cultural moment where we are completely bereft of symbolism. And without that symbolism, there's two things that happen, or could happen, that, as Jung would say. The first thing, well, there's three. The first thing is often some people in this place, and this has happened before, will look to places that have not yet over-processed their symbols. And for people in the West, that usually means they look towards Eastern religion and they say, oh, look at these temples with their gorgeous statues, and they have these jewels and incense and colors and water fixtures and fountains and all. And there's such a mystery there. I mean, there's so much. I can barely even keep track of it all. I mean, where do I apply to join Hinduism? They don't realize you can't really, right? And because they're looking for that mystery, that ineffability, because even if we destroy all of these structures, science doesn't nourish us, right? And it certainly doesn't protect us from the existential chasm. And so there is some people who begin to look and say, where can I find something that we haven't completely bled dry? I don't want to look at a cross anymore. I don't want to look at the Virgin Mary anymore. I want to look at Rama. And what's important to understand is that in like 300 AD, the awe that people might feel like looking at a mandala, the awe, the mystery of that, like that's what people felt when they looked at like sculptures of Christ on a cross. They really did have that. It was just the mystery, It was like, it was a symbol. They knew what it meant, but they didn't. And like the disconnect from it. I mean, look at the Sistine Chapel. I was there 2 years ago, and I was like, yeah, I don't have any idea what's going on this ceiling. And at the same time, I understand everything that's on this ceiling, because it was speaking in that archaic imprinted language of archetypes. So some people, they look for this. They say, I need that mystery back. I need to figure it out. And this leads to often a vulgar co-opting of that. I mean, we see that with sort of the mindfulness movement. And I know I'm kind of throwing out a lot of opinions here. It's just, I'm not trying to implicate anyone or say anything. This is just things that I've noticed. But like, for instance, the fact that you take this practice of mindful meditation, and don't get me wrong, it has a lot of practical uses to it, but it's completely cleaved off any sort of theological, cosmological underpinning to it. And it's just weird sometimes to see like meditation guides on magazines that are impulse buys at a checkout at Target, right? So that's one thing. They'll go towards the East or indigenous religions and then co-opt those and bleed those dry, right? Because there is that spiritual hunger that remains. The other thing is that there can be, you look at like the Trinity, right? That Brother Klaus saw. This is another extremely powerful archetype. The idea of the unification of opposites, like the perfect balance caused by the juxtaposition of three, and how sometimes that tension is needed to create a wholeness. And how can that be? How can things be that are opposed to each other? Only the triangle accomplishes this. Everything's pulling in a different direction, and because of that, you have this extremely powerful thing. And so some people go to the East for that. Some people will not be able to handle it. Like the chaos that those symbols are keeping at bay, it will rise. And it is usually embodied through a fair amount of projection. People will begin to see these symbols in places everywhere because they've like run amok, and they are too powerful to be out in the wild. And so this will lead people to extreme judgmentalism, extreme emotionality. It's a disturbed psychic balance. It's like a Koyaanisqatsi, world out of balance, because these things are rising up and they're not contained anymore. We can't understand them. We've eliminated all the tools and symbols that we would normally use and affix to them. Science doesn't work, right? Going to Medscape and looking up a research article is not going to do anything for these chaotic forces that are just sort of like swirling about. And please understand, I'm not trying to say that like there's mass demonic incursion or anything, so to speak. However, as Jung would say, you have this void, this chasm that opens up in the space that's left there, and people still want that meaning. And so what are they going to do? They're going to be very, very vulnerable to any ideas that portend to have that meaning, right? Anything that sort of suggests that it can fill that gap left by those people will be very, very ready to do that. And Jung even said it leaves people vulnerable to filling that void with absurd political and social ideas. And then when those don't work, they're quickly tossed aside. But there's the fanaticism about them is so extreme that as those are embodied, before those are bled dry or revealed to be nothing more than just like logical constructs that are based on nothing but human tendencies or proclivity, people can do so much damage because they are as fervent about those ideas as the Spanish Inquisition, right? And so they can punish people and they can put people on trial, right? And this is something that it just never works. Like, that's the whole thing, is humans cannot, the Tower of Babel, right? You cannot build this thing that reaches to the heavens. And if you do, it leads to just the conflict of difference, right? Which is what that story is all about. And the tower would be a very strong archetype, as would be the flood, right? These are things that we had names for them. And because we had names for them, because we had symbols for them, we were able to manage them. It bridged that gap between the conscious and the unconscious. And so without that, psychological instability, extremism, obsessive behaviors, because there is no seal. I mean, we talk about like apocalyptic seals breaking. The seals that we have are those sort of archetypical runes that we have. Those are designed to seal away that ineffable energy. And I don't know about you, but one thing I've reflected on a lot, and I don't know if anyone else shares this actually, so I don't want to make a blanket statement, but I've dreamed a lot less in the last 20 years. Like in since 20 years ago, I barely ever remember any dreams. And I think that is because there is so much less that needs to be processed by the unconscious because that unconscious is very much alive and running roughshod in the world. That is why art is so on the nose. What do you have to refer to if there's no like seeking through this like spiritual tunnel to the basement of our soul? What do you have to speak to? It's already here. It's in front of all of us. So why not make a painting of an arrow pointing at a person and say uh hatred or something? And it's like, yeah, okay, like I see that every day, because there's nothing to access there. And so myths, religions, all of these would express these universal truths, and they would resonate across generations. It was a gift from generation to generation to tell those myths, because again, they allowed people to process through those archetypes, give meaning to them, and file them away. The other thing is, not everyone's a philosopher, not everyone's a theologian, right? It's just the fact. And this doesn't create any sort of hierarchy of importance of a person. But the bottom line is, somebody needs to fix washing machines. Someone needs to frame art, right? I think about this all the time. Like, people who have these businesses that are like, I run a business replacing this single plastic part in refrigerators that when it wears out, the condenser screws up. And I'm like, how did you get to that? But at the same time, I'm so thankful that you exist. Because if it was all man alones on the planet, there'd be no one fixing refrigerators, right? And so it's not to say that people who are fixing refrigerators are better or worse than, like Plato would call like the philosopher kings, but not everybody can do such an intense exegesis on the nature of reality. There must be a shorthand that they can access and tame the wildness underneath them. And myths do that. Religion did that. Symbols do that, because it was a mystery that was acceptably mysterious. They would look at whatever it might be, a crescent, a cross, a star, and they would say, I don't really get it, but I get it, right? And they would make peace with that. But without that, I need not go on. I mean, there's a reason why Frodo had a ring, right? And you see and by the way, you should definitely take a look at Koyanis Katsi if you ever can. It's one of the most beautiful, it's not even really a movie, like a tone poem. Ron Frick. These sort of, we're losing touch with some of these archetypes as well, in terms of, for instance, the wizened old man, right? The hermit archetype. This is all but gone. I mean, the way that we have sidelined our the elders of our society, that's part of the iconoclasm, right? Instead of being like, yeah, they lived in a different time, they went through a lot, they did the best they could, they came up with some really good ideas, they missed the mark on some of them, but that's okay. The river of time moves on. Now it's like, these people were idiots. What were they thinking? And that's really, really dangerous. That is out of balance, right? We need these archetypes because everything that connects us to the collective unconscious, that facilitates the psychological integration, it provides meaning guidance, protection, and it paves the path to individuation. These are universal structures. They shape the human experience. They help us navigate, help us understand ourselves, help us understand other people, forgive them more easily, give them a pass when they need it, feel sympathy for them, and connect. Without these archetypes, we have nothing to confront the mystery of existence. And it is a mystery. Anybody who claims to have a monopoly on the answer to that should be treated with suspicion, because nobody knows. Nobody knows. We have this inner and outer world that everybody is terrified. All of us are, unless we have traveled very far up the ladder of self-actualization, we are terrified of death, and we deal with that by compartmentalizing it. We are fixated on trying to bring order to what is most certainly unmanageable chaos. Danger surrounds us. There is no safety. There is no home but the one we make. And the only thing that makes us feel anchored is holding on to somebody else who is holding on to somebody else who is holding on to somebody else. That is a circle. That is a circle. That's a seal. That's a protection. So without that, good luck to everyone. I hope that graphing calculators and ChatGPT can fend off the void. I have a feeling they're part of it. But this is, to me, important for me to talk about this, even if you don't agree with anything I've said, because I think it's important to consider these questions that we assume the answer to now, that people before they had speech, there had to be questions like this. You think of like a pre-verbal person, a Homo erectus or Cro-Magnon, and like, why wouldn't they kill someone to get food? And yet here's this person who not only will they not hurt them, even though they have to share their food with them, right? But they won't hurt them because they love them. But what is it? And it's their mother. That must have been very, very weird, right? Like, animals, even very developed animals, don't always have that. I know the YouTube dodo videos or whatever aside, like, most animals will eat your ass if you die in the house. And so there's something there. There's something there. It's magic. Anyways, I hope that maybe through all of this, you just bought Vox Gravis just to shut me the hell up. If you have any thoughts about what I've said, I'm not looking to argue any of these points or anything, but I mean, feel free to write whatever you want. But this is just my impression of the importance of these archetypes. What a way to get people to buy this. Here's my extremely narrow views of the world. It's all falling apart by my supplement. It's available on DriveThruRPG. Link below. And thanks for coming. Gosh, why do people keep coming back? I guess somebody enjoys it. I'm enjoying it. The seal, that's an archetype. The actual, like, waffle, that's an archetype. A lot of archetypes. The end of the video.